Okay, hi everyone. Excited to talk today about renegotiating your relationship with your partner after baby. We're going to give it just a couple more minutes before we start to let everyone get here. While we're waiting, if you'd like to put in the chat where you're from, if you are pregnant, if your baby's here, when your due date is, how old your baby is. It would be nice to connect a little before we talk. So anyone who wants to let me know, there's a chat. You can write in anything you want. While we're doing the talk, if a question comes up, to please put it in the Q&A. And then at the end of the discussion, I'm going to talk for about 20 to 30 minutes at the most, and then open it up to answering any questions that you guys have. So anything that you have either now or while I'm talking, please put in the Q&A. Okay, so, I got first baby due April 24th. Awesome. Okay, so this is a let's prepare, which is always great to think ahead of time about the things that are going to have to be renegotiated rather than waiting till you're in the emotional angst of it to work on renegotiating. Because having these conversations beforehand really is being proactive and I think helps a lot. So great. Okay, and I have someone else, 27 weeks. Pregnant, yay. Oh, from Carmel. Lovely. Yeah, I know we have people from all over, which is so terrific. I'm from California as well, but Southern California, Los Angeles. Great. If you're in Los Angeles, you might know of the pump station. That's the curriculum director there. So we're coming to you from Santa Monica. Well, I'm not in Santa Monica right now, but the pump station is. Yeah. New York. Awesome. Welcome. I'm originally from New York. You might hear a few words slip out with a New York accent. Kentucky. Awesome. Welcome. Due in June. Okay, so seems like a lot of people who are due coming up as opposed to babies already here. Oh, Hawaii. Welcome. Terrific. So exciting to have people from all over. Okay. Okay, guys. So, okay, great. So I'm going to get started. Um, as I said before, I love when things could be interactive and sort of in this format. It's me talking and you guys listening, but definitely want to know your thoughts. So any thoughts or questions while I'm talking, please feel free to put in the Q&A, and then at the end, I will read those over and hopefully answer everything that we don't get to during the talk. So we're going to start. We're 1 minute early, but we're going to start. So just to introduce myself, if you haven't taken one of these before with me, because I've done a few others, my name is Dr. Jill Campbell, and I am a licensed clinical psychologist with over 25 years experience, specializing in maternal mental health, early child development, and parenting. In addition to having a private practice, I am the curriculum director at the Pump Station and Nursery. I'm the curriculum director of our Parent and Me program. That would be helpful, which is a program for new parents adjusting to the first couple of years of life with a baby and toddler. And the Pump Station is a parenting resource center and boutique, and we are located in Santa Monica, California. Okay, so today we are talking about renegotiating your relationship with your partner after baby. When baby first arrives, each parent faces challenges, right? So even in the best circumstances, change can be stressful, even change that we actively seek. So you and your partner are saying goodbye to an old to your old life in order to transition into a new role. So in addition to getting used to this new family dynamic, you're now dealing with what? Sleep deprivation, the constant demands of a baby, postpartum hormones, which often lowers libido. So there's going to be a lot going on in your relationship, especially during that first year after baby. So, according to data from the Relationship Research Institute in Seattle, which is an organization focused on strengthening families, about two-thirds of couples see the quality of their relationship drop within 3 years of the birth of the child because conflict often increases and then that can cause emotional distance to develop. So, part of the problem is that couples don't know the most important thing in the relationship is keeping that communication and that friendship and that connection of this is my partner, this person has my back. But when we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, as we often do with new situations, we have conflict as in order to deal with the anxiety. And so then that sometimes builds a wall. And then over time, if we don't break down that wall, we could find difficulty in our relationships. So, one of the most important things, even if you're not feeling like your relationship is quite what it used to be, it's tools in keeping the communication and the friendship in the relationship alive. So we are going to look at what are the most common topics that need to be renegotiated after having a baby. So the order that I'm going to tell you these topics in is not in any particular order of, oh, this is more important to renegotiate than this. It's more, these are the most common areas in which couples find themselves, having to discuss a different way of doing things and communicating about. So since we have a lot of people here whose babies aren't even born yet, maybe just jotting down these topics and starting to talk about them even before baby is here and how you see these topics possibly changing and maybe how you're going to deal with them. So getting that early start is really beneficial. So the first area that we often have to renegotiate after baby is money, right? So money might be tighter than before. In addition to all your other expenses, you're now spending a lot of money on babies. Babies tend to be pretty expensive. Childcare can be a huge expense. You might find you need a different car. Maybe the car you had doesn't accommodate a baby, or the place you're living now was ideal for being a couple, but not so great for raising a family. So you might have to move. Maybe one parent is going to take time off to be a stay-at-home parent. So then the amount of money coming into the house is not the same as it was before. So there's a lots of reasons why money needs to be renegotiated after baby. So one of the biggest tips with that is that we don't look at money as purely a means to pay for what you need. That's certainly a big part of what money is, but money is also very emotional and money can symbolize a lot to people. So if you were making money and now you're going to be a stay-at-home parent for a while, what does that mean emotionally, not bringing in an income? If you're going to maybe just be having less money and you had expendable income, now not as much expendable income, what does that feel like emotionally? Money can symbolize freedom, it could symbolize control, it can symbolize self-esteem, safety, security. There's so many things that emotionally that money triggers for us. So if you're having a discussion with your partner about, gee, how are we going to save money? We want to start a college fund, or we're going to do private schools, or, we want to put aside life insurance. Like whatever these conversations are, remembering that there's going to be a lot of emotions attached to what the money symbolizes for each person. And so sometimes talking about that beforehand can be really beneficial. Another big tip with money that a lot of financial experts make is the tip of, instead of just having one joint account to draw money from is that you have a joint account for the family expenses, but then each person also keeps a private account, and that you decide together, like, of your income, what percentage goes into the joint account, which is obviously going to be the larger percentage, but then how much each person gets in their individual account. So maybe, it's, well, 85% is going to the joint, and then we're going to divide what's left into the other two accounts. And the reason for that is because then each person could have some money that they don't feel they have to constantly check in with their partner about how to spend that money. So especially if you're going to have an unequal relationship with how much money each person's bringing in, right? Because if one partner is staying at home for a while, they are still working. They are working very hard. Taking care of a baby is a lot, but they might not be bringing in money. And sometimes then they feel like they have to ask permission if they want to do something for themselves. Um, a lot of times the person who is making the money is like, of course you could do something for yourself, but it doesn't feel like an even playing field. And so talking about that, and then each person knowing they have some of their own money to do with what they want, where they don't have to check in with their partner about, usually helps with those other conversations when you do need to check in about, oh, we want to get a new car, or, what cribs should we pick out for our baby, or things like that. Okay, so the next topic that often needs to be renegotiated once baby is here is division of labor. So who picks up the baby when the baby cries, who feeds the baby, who changes diapers, who shops for the baby, who takes the child to the doctor, who finds the child's care, all these details of taking care of a baby. And then there's all the household chores, who's doing the cooking, the cleaning, the vacuuming, the food shopping, etc. So studies show that even though couples today definitely have less defined gender roles than in previous generations, um, that there's still not an egalitarian dividing of household chores. So studies show that women do now do a little less housework than in the past, and men do a little more, but there's still a significant gap that remains in how much women do in as far as household chores and child care over men. So this is really important, because what it can lead to is a lot of fighting and distancing. Again, we said, like, fighting and distancing are natural responses to stress. So one of the things that you see happening sometimes after baby is that there becomes this tit for tat. Well, I did A, B, C, and D, and you've been, sitting and watching TV, and I'm doing all this. And it's because you're feeling overwhelmed, and you're feeling stressed, and you're trying to manage a new normal. But when it doesn't feel like the division of household chores and child care is fair, then it can cause a lot of arguments. It doesn't have to be equal. It doesn't have to be, well, I'm doing 5 things, you're doing 5 things, but it does have to feel fair to both partners. One thing we know too, and I know this sounds so stereotypical and maybe even outdated, but the research definitely still confirms this, is that women feel like if there's something that needs to be done and my partner sees it has to be done, they should just do it. I shouldn't have to ask them to do it, because if I ask them to do it, I feel like I'm being a nag. So they will watch their partner possibly walk past, dishes in the sink or garbage that needs to be taken out, and not say anything, but then get really aggravated if their partner doesn't do the dishes or take out the garbage. And we know that men, and again, this is a generalization, tend to respond better to direct requests. So they tend not to see it as nagging, but they might not, think, oh, the garbage is full, ding, 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 better take it out right now. They might think, oh, I'll get to it later. One of us will take it out eventually. So it is important to be communicating about, what your expectations are. And one of the tips that we find is, instead of just, going, well, you saw that there, why didn't you do it? Is to actually sit down together and kind of go over what are the weekly chores, what are the monthly chores, what are the daily chores, and deciding who's going to do which chores, actually divvying them up in a way that feels fair, because that way you don't have to really have a big discussion about it. You kind of know which things are, you agreed to do, and which things your partner agreed to do. And a lot of times, something just as simple as that relieves a lot of arguing or resentment, or feeling, like it's just not fair. One of the things, and I talked about this a little bit, I did a topic on attachment. And one of the things when it comes to baby care is that a lot of times, the and I know this sounds stereotypical again, but a lot of times the mom is the one spending more time with the baby, especially if she's breastfeeding. And so she's forming this bond, and she's really getting to know her baby. And so then tends to be the one who then is the authority. And in a way that doesn't feel good to either parent, because moms will feel like, well, I'm new at this too. I never had a baby before either. I want your input. And the partner needs to feel, right? If it's daddy needs to feel like he is bonding and that he knows what he's doing, and certainly doesn't want to feel like someone is hovering over him and micromanaging every little thing he does, because that does not help. That does not provide a conducive relationship for sharing baby care. So really important to maybe even have, like, okay, you're going to be in charge of doing the baths. You're going to be in charge of the first 4 hours of the night. I'm going to be in charge of the second 4 hours of the night. Whatever, however you divvy things like that up as well, so that both partners can have that time where they're responsible for baby care, they're parenting, they're bonding, they're learning about their baby, and the other partner won't have as much of an inclination then to maybe go, oh, wait, let me take over because I know how to do this better because I've been doing it more, which can also lead to, arguing and not feeling seen or heard. So moving on, one more tip for division of labor is to remember how important it is to let your partner know that you appreciate all the things that they're doing. So, when you see your partner, whether it be baby care, whether it be household chores, anything with division of labor, when you see your partner doing something for the family, a little like, hey, thanks for getting the coffee started. Really appreciate it. Little things like that go a long way. Wow. Um, Look how you get the baby to laugh, just little bits of appreciation and thanking each other for all that you're doing. You're both doing a lot. And you're both going to probably feel like you're a bit overwhelmed, and there's always more to do than there is time for a while. Okay, so a third topic we need to renegotiate is extended family. So this is one that pre-baby, and so since we have a lot of uh, pre-baby people watching today, this is a great opportunity to think about this, because in our Parent and Me classes, a lot of times it comes up like, oh, we talked a little bit about money, we talked a little bit about household chores, but we never really thought about extended family until baby was here. And then all of a sudden they're finding that how they pictured extended family would be involved is different than it's actually happening. And sometimes that's causing some renegotiation in how extended family is going to play a role in your family. Things are a little different now with COVID, because sometimes, COVID's ruling why maybe extended family isn't able to come and visit, and you thought they were going to be really helpful and now they can't come and visit. Or maybe they're in your little bubble, and so they're one of the few people you do feel safe having over, and then they're over all the time, and then that feels like too much even though you appreciate their help. So talking ahead of time about, well, how do we see, your parents and my parents and extended family playing a role? How often do we see them, visiting? How much are we going to let them dictate sort of, words of wisdom that they might have, because they might have great words of wisdom, but they've also parented little babies quite a long time ago, and it might not be the way that you want to parent your child. And so how do you take on when they're kind of, if they are giving you their opinions and they maybe are unsolicited? So talking about this, and then and remembering that your unit, your partner, your baby, this is your little unit. This is what takes precedence now, right? Sometimes what happens is we now have a family, and you see that as a big shift. You're a parent now, but your parents sometimes still see you as the kids. And so even though they acknowledge, of course, you are a parent now, they still see themselves as your parent and you as the kids, and that you sort of following suit to the rules they're making. So sometimes, with gentleness and kindness and lovingness, because it's with the best of intentions, we need to let them know, hey, we got this. And so usually if there's a discussion like that to be had, rule of thumb, it's best to come from the son or daughter of the parents, right? So not, the partner. Usually parents will take that um, with more kindness and understanding when it's their child who's communicating, like, hey, we really appreciate it, but we're going to do it this way, or we've got this covered, thank you, or oh, we've been reading and talking to friends, and this is how we're going to baby proof or sleep train or introduce solids or whatever it is, um, so that the person who's the biological, or maybe not biological, but who's the parent, you know what I'm saying, is the one who does the discussion. Also, if you do have a situation where extended family maybe doesn't have strong boundaries with, like, how often they're coming over, being proactive and um, sort of beating them to the punch and letting them know, like, hey, this is our schedule. This is what would work for us. These are the times where, they're in between naps or that we have some free time. And so being the one to tell them beforehand, when you would like visitation can often help a lot. So let's also talk about levels of needing each other. So interestingly, levels of needing each other can really shift after having a baby. So it could be perhaps, you love being a couple, but you're a very independent person. And so you're also really good with doing things on your own, um, and your own interests. With COVID, I know that changes a little bit too, because we're all stuck at home a lot more. But all of a sudden you have a baby and you feel a lot more needy of your partner than before. You kind of realize, wow, I need help here. I need to feel like we're a team here. I don't feel so independent and want to do as much on my own right now. Or perhaps you're having this great love affair with your baby, bonding and getting to know them, and then it feels like your partner's so needy of you, and doesn't feel like they're the most important person in your life anymore. And your partner may be feeling that way, and they may be feeling that way and feel guilty for feeling that way. Or your partner might be the one having the love affair with the baby, and you might be feeling a little left out. So, sort of the levels of needing each other can shift and change after having a baby. And so it becomes really important to check in with each other about that. And if one of you is needing a little bit more, expressing that in a way that your partner can understand. So now let's talk about alone time, couple time, family time. So it's really important that you get all three of these, and also really challenging, because when you have a baby, your social life and your free time definitely decreases. But each partner needs to have their own alone time. Oftentimes, what you'll see is that one partner will sort of take some alone time, and the other partner might secretly resent it because they're not getting alone time. And it's not about taking alone time away from the partner that's getting it, it's about working out a system where you both can have some alone time. And then, of course, you're going to have your family time, but you also want to have some time as a couple without baby. And again, I know that's so super challenging now. In the time that we're living, I don't know how many months until we're in a different situation with that. Once we are, certainly important to um, think about some date times where you and your partner can go or do something, and a caregiver can watch the baby. But even before that, even just something like, okay, once the baby's sleeping, instead of trying to do a million chores or go on the computer and catch up on all our emails, like let's like put on the calendar a half an hour where maybe we're gonna have a picnic in the living room. We're going to put down a blanket, maybe get some pizza, some wine, and that's going to be like our date time. And literally putting some of those times down on the calendar. It doesn't come as organically as it did beforehand. And it is really important to have some time to connect as a couple, not as two parents. And so, one of the things I recommend is also trying to have some time each week that you do connect, maybe putting it down on the calendar, like a check in, what's happening parent wise, like, oh, any doctor's appointments coming up? Oh, we need to go pick out a stroller. Which ones are we looking at? Let's talk about it. So you could have those discussions. And then when you have the date time, even though you might not actually be leaving the house, the baby talk is kind of off the table. And that's the time to connect again as a couple, and ask open ended questions, just like, hey, what are you enjoying most about being a parent? Or, hey, once things, settle down, where's a place that you might want us to go as a family and visit? Or what's something you've always been scared of doing but always wanted to do? Like just fun, open-ended questions that like you might ask someone on a date to get to kind of connect in that way again. Really, really important. Okay, and then lastly, we're going to talk about restoring intimacy in the relationship. So we often have to renegotiate sex in the relationship, and a lot of people are going to be like, "What's that? I have a vague memory. Oh yeah, that's how the baby got here. Maybe not." But sex in the relationship is something that often uh, does decrease after having a baby, for lots of reasons. Mainly, new parents are physically exhausted and sleep deprived. And when you are sleep deprived and you get an opportunity to sleep, you will typically choose sleep over anything else. Newborns need to eat every 2 to 3 hours. That could sort of leave not a whole lot of time for thinking about other things. If you're a new mom that's breastfeeding, a lot of times breastfeeding moms will talk about, I had this being attached to me all day long. Like once they're down, I know it sounds horrible, but I just don't want to be touched by anybody else. I feel touched out is the term that comes up a lot. So you might be feeling that for a while. Um, Also, if you're nursing, hormonal changes, such as your body is producing more prolactin, which helps produce milk. But prolactin actually decreases estrogen, and estrogen is the hormone that's attached to your libido. So if your estrogen levels are low, you're not going to have the same libido for a while. Also, just childbirth can lower estrogen levels for a while, and that can also cause sex to be painful and unpleasurable for a while when estrogen levels are really low. Men also do experience some hormonal changes. They do have lower testosterone levels after baby's born. And so that can lead to just a lower libido for a while. Also can lead to a little bit of feeling sadness or depression. So hormonal levels are not just women, men do experience a shift in that as well. And then also A woman who's carried a baby might have some changes in their body, such as weight gain or stretch marks or C-section scars. And sometimes those things can lead to her feeling a little less sexy for a while, a little bit more inhibited sexually for a while. So there's a lot of things that are going to be going on, with reasons why sex life might be decreased a lot longer than the 6 weeks postpartum, post having a baby. So what do we do about it? The biggest thing is to talk about it. A lot of times couples avoid talking about this because they don't want to hurt their partner's feelings. But it's so normal. And if you talk about it, you connect emotionally. And when you can connect emotionally, um, that makes you feel seen, that makes you feel heard, and that actually brings up more of those sexual feelings. So, and even if it doesn't lead to sex, it can just lead to feeling more like, okay, that we're talking about this, it's not going to be forever, and we're feeling connected as a couple. So talking about it's really important. Also, a tip is to set aside time for non-sexual intimacy. So if you're maybe not yet ready to have sex, setting aside time just to like cuddle, go for a walk and hold hands, give each other back massages, just little ways to connect physically that without the expectation that it has to lead to sex. Sometimes it does, because sometimes if you could just let yourself, connect and have that little physical touch, you then start to feel, oh, we can do more. Other times not. It's just that physical touch feels nice, it feels connected, and it helps you realize, okay, we are a team. We are, in this together. Um, Also, to give yourself some transition time, because one of the things you see sometimes is couples are like, okay, the baby's sleeping, we've got 20 minutes, and there's no transition time. And so you're still in parent mode and you're not feeling very sexual. But if you kind of put that date on the calendar and okay, tonight after the baby's down, we're going to sit with a little bit of wine, or we're going to make our favorite meal. And so to prepare for that, you can do like a little, changing of the hats, sort of maybe, taking a bath or listening to music or even exercise, get those endorphins going. That sometimes really helps, to then put on sort of, a different hat where you feel like, okay, now I feel like a partner, now I feel sexy. And that transition sometimes makes a big difference. Um, Also, if it's an issue with physical pain due to hormones, it's also really helpful to speak with your healthcare provider, because there are things like estrogen creams or sometimes changing birth control that can make a difference and make, uh, it feel, more pleasurable, because if it feels painful, of course, that's going to inhibit you from being sexual. And lastly, it's to just sort of accept that things are different right now, but that they will keep changing. So couples who hold on to expecting that their sex life is going to look like it did before, often feel unhappy and dissatisfied. But if they accept that this first year after having a baby is intense, and you lower your expectations, and um, you let go of the pressure, and you have a sense of humor about it, then it makes it, that again, that connection, that friendship, and that also understanding that it won't last forever. You will have sex again, I promise. Just give it some time. Okay, so those are the things that usually need to be renegotiated. There might be some others that I didn't discuss for you, but those are pretty much the mainstream things that couples talk about. And so now let's talk about, okay, we need to renegotiate these things. How do we do it? How do we have these conversations? I've said it a lot while I was talking. Talk about it, discuss it, talk about it. But how do we talk about it? So I want to put the last part of today's talk on communication skills and how to have these conversations, because they aren't always easy to have. So remember, fighting and distancing are natural responses to anxiety. So it's difficult to avoid these reflexive ways of negotiating a relationship when you're under stress. And so when you are aggravated, your brain kind of shuts down because you're flooded with stress hormones, and it becomes really hard to think clear and to take in new information. So my very first communications tool is do not try to work things out when you are mad. So one of the biggest mistakes that we can make with our partner is to try to resolve a problem right in the moment that we are being triggered. Um, it is when you are most likely feeling stressed, you are the least likely to be able to take in the information and actually come out with an insightful solution. So you definitely want to wait to a time where that trigger has passed. So I'm just going to give you an example. Let's say, for example, I'm a new mom and I'm tired and I'm nursing my baby, and my partner calls out from another room that they're going to go for a run and they'll be back shortly. And before I could even answer, I hear the door close, they're out the door. And so the hour mark hits, they're not home. The 2 hour mark hits, and they finally come in and they say, "Oh, I ran into so and so at the park, so we ended up talking." And then I thought, "Oh, I might as well stop. I'm in the car. I might as well stop and do a couple of errands on my way home." And so that's why I'm 2 hours, I'm back 2 hours later. And I might be thinking, oh my gosh, I was thought as soon as I stopped nursing, I was going to get into that hot shower. I was going to wash my hair. I had this all planned. You were at the door. It's 2 hours later. Baby was fussy. I wasn't able to do anything. And I am fuming. If I try to have the conversation in that moment, it might come out like, well, isn't it just nice that you just had a baby and you can still do whatever you want? You have all the free time in the world. I, on the other hand, have no free time. You are so selfish, right? That's how it might come out. And what kind of a response am I going to get if that's how I'm trying to communicate, right? Am I going to get a partner who's going to say, like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize, let's work out a system? Probably not. I'm going to get someone who just got scolded, who is maybe feeling shamed, who's feeling certainly criticized. And so I am more likely going to get a very defensive response back. So, what I need to do is, in that moment that I'm feeling triggered, I need to let it go at that time. Maybe go do some deep breaths, maybe say, okay, you're back, I'm taking a shower. Um, and then come back. And maybe it's 30 minutes later, maybe it's a few hours later, maybe it's after later in the evening after I see my partner playing with the baby and seeing the baby smile and giggle, and seeing that connection between them, and I'm feeling more good feelings toward my partner. And then it's the time to say, hey, can we discuss something that happened earlier today? Because then you're coming from that adult you're not coming from, either the critical parent who's like, why didn't you, and you should have, or the little kid who's like, you're so mean, you don't, da, 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 right? So we all have these different parts. So we want to come from that adult part of us where we can really have a rational conversation. And so then I usually recommend using what's called the sandwich technique. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this. Some of you may have, but it's a really wonderful communication technique for being heard when you want to, tell somebody that you want to change the way that they are doing something, and you want to have a really productive conversation. So what you do is, if you think of a sandwich, you have like the bread, you have the meat, you have the bread. So the bread is going to be two complements, right? And the meat is going to be the thing you want changed. So if I start out with a compliment, and it has to be authentic, it can't be like me, like, making something up to try to like sugarcoat something. I have to pull out something that's real and authentic, so I might start out with, I know, I really want to tell you how much I appreciate how many chores you've been doing around the house. I really see how much work you're doing. I really appreciate that. And then I go into the meat. So then I say, but, today I was nursing the baby and you told me you were going to go for a run and you were out the door really quick. I didn't have a chance to discuss anything with you. And I really had the expectation of getting this nice long shower. And I know you need your run. It's really important for you to have some self care, but I also need to have some self care too. And so I was hoping that, we can maybe talk about how to create a system so that we each get some alone time or some self-care time, because I felt like I didn't, like, I was all set to have it and I felt really disappointed when I didn't have it. And so that way I'm just sort of stating what happened, right? That's what happened. Like, and I'm not saying you did something really wrong or bad. You're just saying, I didn't get that self-care time that I was expecting. And so what's the point of having the conversation? Right? The point of having the conversation is moving forward. We both need to have some self-care time or some alone time. Let's figure out a system that works for the both of us, right? So then, and then you can end with just, I really appreciate that I know this is a crazy time. There's so much on both our plates. I really appreciate, us when we can work together and figure out solutions. And then what you're going to have is a partner who's like, of course, I want my partner to have some alone time. Oh, I feel badly that you didn't get that shower. I didn't realize. Of course, I didn't realize. But let's figure out how we both can get our needs met. So you're going to have a partner who's much more willing to work with you than if you try to approach them at that moment when you're upset and triggered. Okay, so the second communication tools I want to talk about is the conversation killers, to just be aware of conversation killers. Now, again, these are much more likely to happen if you try to resolve a problem in the moment that you're triggered, but still to be aware of what they are, um, and try to avoid them at all costs. So the first conversation killer is the use of absolutes. So we've found that as soon as a partner says, you never or you always, the conversation is killed, right? Because what's going to happen is your partner is going to immediately feel defensive. So you never listen to me. You always forget to put the dishes away, right? Because you're just going to get, what do you mean always? I put them away 2 weeks ago, because things are rarely absolutes. And so the minute we say absolutes, it just gives your partner that, well, that's not true. You're exaggerating and now I'm feeling defensive. So really trying to avoid absolutes, really trying to avoid putting your partner down, anything that can be um, construed as shaming is not going to be conducive to renegotiating something in your relationship. Nobody likes to feel shamed, and shamed is when they feel like they're bad. They're bad for, like the situation I just gave you before. The partner who ran out to go for a run, they weren't bad, right? They were probably like, oh my God, I was up all night with the baby, or I've done so much around the house. I need to run. Oh, she's nursing. She'll be nursing for a while. Like, their thought processes wasn't, most likely was not, ooh, let me sneak out of the house right now and get out before my partner has a chance to say anything. That's not what was going on. But that partner in that moment, wasn't aware. And so becoming aware and working it out and renegotiating is still important, but shaming that person is never useful. So, really like, oh, you never, well, that's an absolute, but you left your clothes on the floor, you're such a slob, right? That would be an example of shaming or putting them down. And then the last conversation killer is acting superior. So we really want to try to avoid that. Well, I've done A, B, C, D, E, F, G. What have you done? Or I spent all day, doing housework. You spent all day watching television. So really trying to avoid saying anything where you're putting yourself in the position of acting superior, because again, then your partner's going to feel defensive. And and you really want to go into these conversations as, hey, we have each other's back. We're partners here. We had a baby together. We need each other. We love each other. We really do want what's best for one another. How do we accomplish that? Right. And so, one of the things that I do really encourage uh, new parents to do is a little exercise that was developed by John and Julie Gottman. And John and Julie Gottman are a couple that have done extensive research on marital stability. They've written a lot of books. And one of their suggestions, which I love, is they say every day to try to practice the 3 A's. So the 3 A's are admiration, appreciation, and affection. So every day, it doesn't take much, right? Every day, a little bit of admiration, pointing out one thing that your partner did that they did well. Like, I love the way you always make the baby laugh, right? Admiration. Appreciation, letting your partner know when you appreciate something that they've done. As I said before, something as simple as thanks so much for getting the coffee going. I could really use a cup and it's all ready. That's great. I appreciate that. Um, Little things like that make a huge difference. Affection, and again, doesn't mean we're having sex. Maybe we are, but maybe not. And so affection could be snuggling together on the sofa at the end of the day, or holding hands when you go for a walk outside. Those little things um, build that connection. And it's a lot harder to be mad at someone when you're holding their hand or snuggling together. So if we practice these things every day, um, it really helps when we're under stress, to still keep that friendship going, because so often when we're under stress, we point out the things that we don't like that our partner did, but we're silent about the things that they did right or that we appreciate. So when we can acknowledge and validate what our partner is doing right, it helps you to feel like you're in this together, you have each other's backs. And then the Gottmans also talk about working on turning toward one another, not away. And so, what that means is sometimes when you're both stressed out and you're having a hard time and you sense that your partner is maybe upset either with you or just, you know, the baby didn't sleep all night, they're in a bad mood, they're exhausted. Um, we sometimes, to avoid maybe a possible argument or confrontation, we turn away, right? So we kind of try to walk on eggshells or tiptoe around them, or like, not engage. But that leaves someone who's not feeling that great feeling alone. So instead, if we acknowledge, that we sense that there's some unhappiness coming from our partner, so we wanted to check in and ask them if they might need something from us, like, hey, I'm getting a sense you're having a hard day. Is there anything I can do to help? Um, and right away, I mean, imagine like hearing that from your partner on a day that you're feeling stressed, right away, that's going to, even if you were thinking beforehand, well, I'm doing this, and this, and they're not. If they come to me and say, hey, I'm seeing you, I see you're upset right now. I'm not sure what it's about, but you know, can I help? Is there something I could do? Oh my gosh, that's gonna immediately change that connection and open up maybe a really important conversation. And the last thing is to remember to repair. No relationship is perfect. No person is perfect. Don't be afraid to show your humanness. Reach out and apologize to your partner when you know you've made a mistake. Um, you are not perfect. You don't want your partner to feel that they need to be perfect. It's normal to mess up sometimes, and you are not any less worthy because of it. You do want to model to your children as they grow that, adults can make mistakes, they can get into arguments, and they can talk it out, they can repair, they can apologize. And that lets your children know that they don't have to be perfect in a relationship. They can mess up and apologize. So it's not showing weakness, it's showing authenticity. And when you are authentic and genuine, you will be trusted. So repair, super important communication tool. Okay, guys, I hope this was helpful. That's pretty much my talk, but I definitely would love to see and check in. I see there's one question. So I'm going to the Q&A. Oh, so it's not a question. It's just someone saying, um, what I asked earlier is to check in, and someone who said hello. But does anyone have any questions? Please type them in. All right, maybe I'm not looking in the right place. Wait, let me check chat. Guys, put them in chat. Okay, wait. Ah, I got a question. Okay, I'm seeing 7 new messages and I'm not seeing them, so I hope I'm not missing something. But I did get someone who said, "What books do you recommend to learn more?" Okay, so actually, one of the books for relationships that I do really like is by the Gottmans. It's called "And Baby Makes Three." It's one of the best books. It's not super new, but it's really one of the best books out there on your relationship and how it changes after baby. So let me even see if I have it over here. I could pull it out. Oh, here it is. Okay. So just to show you guys, it's called "And Baby Makes Three," and it's by the Gottmans. And that would be one of my favorite books on this topic. Okay, so no questions. But that was a great talk. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Oh, that was great. Okay, oh, here's a question. How do you deal with the in-laws who are not on the same page with COVID restrictions from your doctor? Okay, well, that's like a big question. But I would just go back to what I said, is that it doesn't matter if your in-laws are not on the same page. What matters is you and your partner are on the same page. And when you and your partner are on the same page and you discuss it, then it's since it's your in-laws, it would be your partner's parents. So it'd be your partner. Sorry, partner. But that would be the one to just say, we love you guys. We so appreciate, your help and support and us having this baby. But me and my partner have sat down and talked about what we feel comfortable with our baby. And so, I hope you can respect this is how we're doing it. And again, it might ruffle a little bit of, well, we know, or we feel, and you say, like, hey, I totally understand, but this is our conversation. This is, the way that we are choosing to parent. And so, this is what we're doing. And if it comes from the child of the parents, it will go over more smoothly. So whoever wrote this, I wouldn't have you be the one having that conversation. I'd have your partner being the one having the conversation. Okay, so I got a question. I talked to my partner about nerves after baby, about sex. He said, "You've got to fake it to make it." That made me nervous. Is that true? Is that helpful? Okay. So, hey, that's a really great question, actually. And there's different schools of thought. And I've been teaching like Parent and Me classes for about 24 years now. And I have had parents say, hey, push yourself, kind of fake it till you make it, because once you get going, it's usually not so bad. And then you're glad you did. I actually see it a slightly different way. So sorry, partner, but I see it as, don't push yourself if you're really feeling like resistant. because if you force yourself to, it usually doesn't have a great ending. It's usually you're not going to be relaxed. It's not going to be as pleasurable. It's going to feel a little awkward. But I do say push yourself to try the transition. So what we were talking about before, like, put that date night on the calendar and um, write down some open-ended, like date-like questions. And maybe before you have that little date, like do something to help you switch out of mommy mode, like whatever that is, like listening to some fun music or going for a walk or reading a little bit from like a book that you like, whatever it is to help you kind of switch gears. So do as much as you can control to switch gears. And then hopefully in switching gears and relaxing and having that time to connect, you will feel like, okay, I could try this. And maybe you're pushing yourself a little bit. But if you do all of that and you're really not feeling it, I really believe the best thing is to say, I love you. This has nothing to do with you. It really doesn't. It's just like maybe hormonally, and maybe I'll speak to my doctor about some things to try. But right now, tonight, the best I could give you is a back massage or a cuddle or something. It will change. So I'm sort of gonna agree to disagree, that we don't always fake it till we make it, but we do try as best we can to switch gears to put ourselves in that right mindset, because the biggest sexual organ is our brain, for sure. Okay, so how would you approach it if your husband's level of needing you feels more than you needing him? Yeah, well, that's the hard part, is because this is sometimes when the levels of needing each other were kind of copacetic and going really great, and now baby's here and they've shifted, and they'll probably shift again and again and again. But talking about that in a way. Like we said, not in a heated moment where you're like, but you need so much from me. What do you expect from me? I can't do everything, or whatever it is. Or, it's not in that moment. It's in a moment when you're calm and maybe connecting and say, hey, I think, I heard it's really normal that our levels of needing each other are going to be a little bit different right now. Can we talk about that? I'm kind of sensing you're needing more, and right now I'm doing so much with the baby. I don't know if I have all that to give, but I love you. Like, what, and sometimes just opening it up and talking about it, you're going to hear, well, really, if you would, if we could just have, a little bit of time to go on a walk together, or really if, and you'll be like, oh, well, that I could do, or just them being reassured. It's not that you don't care about them anymore. It's just that there's so much you're dealing with. Just hearing that sometimes just changes the dynamic, because there's so much changing right now. So there's not like an easy answer, but it's about having the conversation. So I hope that helps. Um, any advice on how to approach different parenting styles? Yeah, so yeah, that's a big one. So there's a lot of literature on parenting styles, and a lot of how we parent automatically comes from how we were parented. So one of the first things is to talk about, how with your partner, well, how were you parented? Did you like how you were parented? What did you like? What didn't you like? And kind of seeing, like, if my partner had much more authoritarian parents who had a lot of strict rules, and I maybe came from more permissive parents who like never gave me a curfew. It's like, oh, well, we see things really differently. Well, what did I like about having permissive parents? What did I not like? What did he like about having authoritarian parents? What did he not like? And having that conversation, and then really listening to each other, like if it's on a specific topic, like let's say it's about sleep training, you know, having like, well, why do you like sleep training? Why don't you? Would you be willing to to read some articles I got on the topic? Would you be willing to talk to the pediatrician about the pros and cons, or even maybe, a psychologist, so we can kind of mediate through that. But understanding each other's backgrounds, hearing each other out, Sometimes having that conversation, holding hands, and agreeing to be open and take in what the other person has to say and think about it, um, are huge steps in coming together and compromising when it comes to different parenting styles. Okay. Let's see. How can you find a couples therapist, like a good one? Um, Psychology Today actually has a great website that lists a lot of psychologists and um, marriage, family therapists, social workers. So you'd have to put in you know, your area code, and then it'll pop up, which ones are in your area, and then or ask, I mean, referrals from friends, family members, if you're willing to ask them, or from your doctors. And then it's really important. There are a lot of really good therapists out there, but not every therapist is the right therapist for you or for your relationship. So most therapists, like when I work with somebody, I always set up a half-hour phone call first, to what I don't charge for, to just sort of see, well, what's the presenting problem? Um, how do what are you looking for? What kind of work do I do? You have that conversation, and then you decide together if you feel like you're a good fit to work together. And a lot of therapists will do that. They'll give you some time, to talk to them first before setting up an appointment and having them as your therapist. And to me, that's the best way to go for everybody, because therapists want to be able to work with somebody who they feel they can help as much as you want someone that you feel comfortable with. So that's what I would recommend doing. Okay, let's see. To state the obvious, just looking at the time, we have just a couple more minutes. Men can't breastfeed, but less obvious are some tried and true ways in which we can support our partners who choose to breastfeed. What do you recommend? Um, but less obvious are some tried and true ways in which we can support our partners. Um, so I'm not sure if you mean support the men who can't breastfeed, or if had the men to support the women who are breastfeeding. I'm not sure, but I'll like talk about both. So men could definitely help support their partners who are breastfeeding, um, by sitting and talking to them when they're breastfeeding, bringing a pillow, bringing some water. One of the things that I think is the most helpful is, especially at the very beginning, when you're breastfeeding, until babies regain their birth weight, those first couple of weeks. Um, you might need to breastfeed every 2 to 3 hours during the night. And that makes it really hard for you to break the night in half and get like a stretch of uninterrupted sleep. But what sometimes men can do that's super helpful is, if it's in their partner's half, um, that if the baby wakes up during that time, that they actually get the baby, maybe change the baby's diaper, bring the baby over to the breastfeeding mama, let the baby breastfeed, and then take the baby, burp the baby, put the baby back. So during the mom's half of the night, even though they're breastfeeding, they're not having to fully get up, and they could sort of stay relaxed. And that's a huge, huge help. Um, and then for how women can support men, I would say is just, breastfeeding is not, by far, not the only way we bond and form a relationship with our baby. There are so many ways, and dads come up with amazing ways, and ways that moms never think of. Oh, she likes to be held this way. Oh, when I play this little game with her. Oh, and I put her on my chest and kind of pat her back. I mean, whatever it is, it's giving the dad the opportunity, and not being, sometimes when we breastfeed and we form that bond and we read our baby's cues, and then we give baby to daddy and baby starts to cry. We're like, oh, here, and so not to do that, to trust that dad will find their way. He will find his way to bond and calm that baby. And so if the baby doesn't need the feeding at that moment, to not rescue dad. That's, I think, the way you can help dad the most. And then eventually, if you are breastfeeding and you do pump, you might pump a bottle each day, and then that could be dad that gives that bottle so that he gets to have that experience of feeding the baby. But there are so many ways to bond and connect and build a relationship with the baby other than feeding the baby. So giving daddy that opportunity to do that. Okay, this is going to be our last question. Oh wait, do you have a website? I do have a website. My website's not super big, but please check it out. It's www.drjillcampbell.com. And so then this question is, if you and your partner are not on the same page, with COVID, again, like I would just have to say, it's like you're not on the same page with any topic. It's having that conversation. It's coming at it as, we're not on the same page, but we're on the same team. We both want what's best for our family. We just don't see it as the same way. So let's sit down together, with not in a heated moment when we're triggered, and let's have there's sometimes what we call a take turn approach. You could even get an object like a baton, right? So this pass the baton is where it comes from, but it could be any object. It can be, I'm holding glasses, I don't know, whatever it is. And so you take turns of, well, this is how I see it. This is why I see it this way. And then your partner says, okay, this is what I'm hearing you say. So the point of that is only to clarify, like they're getting it right, not to agree or disagree, but like what I'm hearing you say is that correct? And then you say, yes, that's how I see it, or no, you're not getting this point, I meant this. And then you pass the baton and your partner says, well, this is how I see it, da, 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 da. And then after you've both really heard each other, and maybe again, even holding hands, is when you try to compromise. Like, well, is there anything that I said that you could see changing? Is there anything I said you could see changing? Is there a way we can compromise? So it's the same whether it's COVID or whatever it is that you're not agreeing on. It's really going into the conversation with the attitude of, we are a team, we're in this together. We really do both want what's best for our family. We're just seeing it in a slightly different way. Okay. So topics you suggest to talk about before, but yes, the topics that I just mentioned to you, those are the topics. Those are the ones, and also too, if it's before baby arrives, you might want to talk about, and again, COVID changes everything, but talking about like, do you want, do you want any help after baby, right? Like, do you want to have a night nurse or a postpartum doula? Or did you want to have a relative come and help out? And talking about that ahead of time is really important too. And again, with COVID, it might look a little different, but but then also these other things that we talked about, the money and the, what's on your list is something alone time that you're going to really need to have. What is, if you had to give up a few things, what would you give up, and what can't you give up? How are we going to manage chores? Like all the things we talked about, to me, are the key ones. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care. And I'm gonna